everybody. We're back again. We promised that
Hello.
we would be here. Hi, Shema. Thanks for joining us all the way from France. So we were just chatting about migraines, which unfortunately both of us suffer from. And that's my most debilitating health issue for sure. I don't know how many of you suffer from migraines, but it's been a recurring theme for me pretty much most of my adult life, if not all of my adult life. I thought maybe actually when I was pregnant was the best. I didn't get migraines that whole time.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And then as soon as I gave birth, it started again. So, then I thought maybe, what happens when women get older. I thought, okay, maybe they'll go away because a lot of women have that happen because your hormones change. Not so lucky. So with me, it can come on any day, at any time, for any reason. And I try to work through it, but you can always tell, right, Shema? Like my voice changes. Yeah. I have no intonation. I sound like I literally feel dead. Yeah. And my son last night came down in the middle of the night crying that he had a headache. And I was just saying to Shema how I pray to God that he doesn't have migraines because it's the worst. And most of the time it's mostly women that are afflicted, but men also suffer from them. So hopefully it was just like a one time
like thing. A passing thing. Yeah.
Yeah, he does complain about his head hurting from time to time, but fortunately it's not that often. And I did mention it to the doctor. She didn't seem that worried, but we're not here to talk about my son today. So we're here to talk about the topic that we always talk about, the topic that you can see behind my screen. I decided to use this, my podcast art actually, which we took obviously the Canada and US flags and colorized them into my brand, purple. We should have done it purple and silver, but we did it purple and white. And actually, I think it might be silver now that I'm looking at it. It might just
it's a little bit grayish,
Yeah,
it has some
a little grid there. So and I just recalled and I was reminded actually that on Monday is a civic holiday in Ontario. So you have an August long weekend, which is nice. I don't know if that's elsewhere in Canada. I think it's also in Alberta, but I don't know if it's across the country. I left before that holiday was actually instituted, and I wish that we had that holiday here, but we don't. However, I am very excited. Yes, I'm very excited that on Tuesday, I'll be driving to Tampa with my son to see the Blue Jays play in Tampa. And he's beyond excited. They have a night game on Tuesday night and a day game on Wednesday afternoon, which works out perfectly. And so we're going up there and we're going to see these two games, and we'll be hopefully with a lot of other Blue Jays fans cheering on our team. I don't even know how much they won last night because Zevi called my uncle who adores baseball, and my uncle was just starting to watch the game. So they spent like half an hour coordinating where they were, like rewinding the game and fast forward, it was crazy. And I said to my uncle, I said, do you remember the days when we couldn't just like decide where we wanted to be in the game and we actually had to watch the game live, or we didn't get to watch it at all? So that's how it was. And and then as soon as they started allowing, I remember my dad, Oliver Shalom, he used to actually record the games and then watch them. And like, I remember the Canada, when the Canada was in the Olympics and stuff, he would record the hockey games, not baseball. Although he did start recording baseball at a certain point when the Jays were becoming good. But, he would be amazed by what goes on now. And literally, it was a half an hour. No, Uncle Alan, I want to be here. And no, Zevi, I'm over here. And don't tell me what happens. And my son already knows that George Springer, I think it was George Springer, or maybe it was Chapman. I don't know I think it was Chapman, sorry, got 2 home runs. And he saw the second home run as my uncle was seeing the first home run. So it was hysterical. And he's 11, so he's having trouble not saying anything. Goes, I'm being a good boy. I'm not saying a word. So anyway, that was what was going on last night. So we are going up for 2 days to Tampa this coming week. So he is beyond excited about that. He's got like a million plans. He wants to get the ball, and he has his glove, and he's got this. I mean, he's a baseball kid. He's obsessed with baseball. So Shema doesn't have kids yet. And, I don't know if in France they get as obsessed with baseball. It's
no. Here it's more about soccer. What you guys call soccer over there. Yeah. So that's the obsession here.
Yeah. Well, we were in the Dominican for just a day on our recent cruise, and half of the Blue Jays are from the Dominican, and they are not even really like, they don't even get the same level of training, but they're just naturals. They just have some, I don't know what it is about that country and baseball, but somehow or other they're in droves. And actually Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was born in Montreal, which is in Canada, just in case but he didn't speak any English until he joined the Jays, because his dad played for the Expos when the Expos existed, and that he just happened to be born there. So he grew up in the Dominican. So anyway, with that being said, we had a couple of questions. We sent out an email yesterday. We had a couple of questions. Shima, I'm not sure if you're able to monitor the Facebook group to let it.
I am checking. Yes, okay, I do.
Perfect. If there's any live questions, but
not so far, no.
But okay, great. But anyway, why don't you go ahead and ask me the questions that were posed to us yesterday?
Yeah, we had quite a few. So the first one was, how can we move to the USA on an L1 visa according to L1 visa requirements? Yeah, since only managers or executives can get the L1 visa.
That is true. So if you are not a senior executive or manager, you do not qualify for an L1 visa. You would have to look potentially at a NAFTA visa and be in one of those categories to be able to be approved for a NAFTA visa, which is now, I think, a 3-year visa. And that can actually move into a green card. That's actually how I did it. Well, no, I take that back. I had NAFTA visas, then I had an H-1B. I had various of them from time to time, depending on who I worked with. And ultimately, I turned my H-1B into a green card. That's what happened. So NAFTA and NAFTA is temporary. So there is a dual intent, which was not cool. So I did have an H-1B when I applied for the green card. So if you are not a senior executive or manager, you cannot qualify for number 2, which mentions I think it mentions intercompany transfer. No. So an L1 visa is an intracompany transfer of a senior executive or manager. So you have to have a branch in wherever your home country is and set up or have a branch existing in the US and transfer the senior executive or manager from one to the other. Okay. And the L1 does lead to a green card, and it is not based on investment, but you do have to show that you've done a competitive analysis to show that the business can be successful. And you do have to have an org chart. It can't just be a couple of employees in Canada and a couple of employees in the US. It has to be a substantial business with multiple employees in order to be a senior executive or manager. You can't just manage one person in Canada or in Brazil or wherever and expect to be transferred. Now, one thing to note about L1 visas is there's no country specificity. So you can get an L1 visa from any country. There's no treaty. You can be from anywhere and potentially qualify for an L1 visa. So for the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, well, we'll leave Russia alone for now, but South Africa, India, China, Venezuela, for example, and a lot of other countries that do not qualify for E2 visas can potentially qualify for L1 visas if they meet the requirements.
Well, okay. Just checking here if there are any questions. So we have people coming and going and liking things, but feel free to ask any questions regarding these topics or any other questions that you guys might have. Questions are always welcome. So do you want to move to the next one?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so the next one says, with an E2 visa, how does it work? Who is permitted to work and for whom?
Okay, so very important because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So when we work with clients, we advise clients to choose a spouse that can potentially earn, if let's say that you have a spouse. First of all, we're going to presume there's a spouse, there's marriage. And one party will be the principal of the business for which the visa is granted or to which the visa is granted. And the other has a derivative visa, which is a work authorization. That spouse can work for anybody without any extra approval or anything. They can even do independent contractor services and be a realtor, for example. So we are oftentimes it will be the spouse that can potentially make more money that is the non-applicant, so the derivative, right? Because the spouse that is the applicant, the beneficiary for the visa, can only work for the sponsoring company. That's it. No other work, no other income other than passive. So you can own real estate, you can own shares in a business, you can own other stuff and other business entities and so on, but you can't work for them, can't draw salary, you can't show income, and you can't be actively operating any other business but the one for which you are sponsored.
Okay, so, and this is something that we often discuss with our clients in their strategy calls when we decide on the course of things and how we're going to lay things out. That's when we kind of decide who's going to be the derivative and who's going to be the main applicant. Yeah. And
sometimes it changes. Yeah. Like, for example, the one that we filed for a client this week on Tuesday, and up until probably about a month before we filed, when we started the business plan, they changed and decided it would be the other spouse that was the principal applicant. So,
yeah. Okay. All right. So, third question, and this is something that we get a lot, is what are the available options from E2 to green card?
So the E2 does not, unfortunately, currently still lead to a green card. So who knows? We keep lobbying for that, the immigration bar, but it hasn't happened. And it's a nightmare because you just keep on being in this perpetual renewal state and not knowing what's going to happen next, right? And it's challenging. And actually, we are in the process of building a group program for all of our past clients so that we can provide that service to them on an ongoing basis after they get their visa, because that's when the work really starts. Not only because you have to run your business and be successful, but because in 5 years, or whatever the case may be, 2 years if you have a change of status, you have to renew your visa. So you have to make sure that you are maintaining an ongoing concerned business, okay? So there is no direct path from E2 to green card. If you have a business in Canada or wherever, and you have multiple employees, you can potentially apply for an EB1C, which is a multinational executive or manager. It's kind of like an L1, but it allows you to get a green card as long as you meet these requirements. Usually we recommend about 8 employees in each country that you are managing, and then you can get this path to a green card. There are other options as well, like, for example, increasing your investment and qualifying for EB5, or maybe investing in a separate business and qualifying for EB5, which is which is a green card through investment, which we'll mention in a moment. And EB5 is a green card, and you can use your initial investment in the E2 business as part of your EB5 investment. Right now, the minimum threshold is $800,000 for an EB5.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. All right, let's move to the last one for today, which is, what are the best EB5 options?
So there's a lot of EB5 options. You can either set up your own business, you can invest in a third party's business, you don't have to have a 50% ownership, but it's not like an E2 where there's an ownership requirement. You can actually just own passively, but you have to be on maybe the board of directors if you're directly investing in the business, okay? Otherwise, you can invest in what's called a regional center project. And a project is basically like investing in a limited partnership. You get a share of a business. That share correlates, it's all through systems and programs and structure and strategy and professional guidance that we figure out how your investment correlates to the creation of the jobs so that you can get a visa. An EB5 is based on the creation of 10 new permanent full-time jobs and your money being at risk. So if you are investing in real estate, that's not going to work because your money's not really at risk. It could be a real estate project, but you have to be building something so that your money is at risk. So there can't be a promissory note or a mortgage or something like that you're investing in, because then your money's not really at risk. So, and the money has to stay at risk throughout the period of application, which can be up to 2 years, although we do have some expedited project options, and for an additional 2 years after you get your conditional green card, because it's a 24-month period to apply for the removal of conditions. So you're potentially having your money at risk for around 4 to 5, maybe a little longer, depending on what country you're from, years. So.
Great. Thank you. So we didn't really have any live questions.
Wow. Well, we're going to, you guys are going to have to start being more active, because we're trying to do this as a service for you so that you can have access to us and be here to answer some of your questions. And that's what we're all about. And if you have questions, post them in the chat. I can't promise that we'll be able to get to them on the next session, but always send us an email. We'll post the email in the chat as well, but it's investingacrossborders1@gmail.com. And you can always reach us there with any questions or concerns. And additionally, we do have a bot, which will give you automatic answers to many questions. And the bot is AskLaurenesq.com. AskLaurenesq, AskLaurenesq.com. If you go there, that's our bot, and you'll have live answers to many questions, and actually a lot of answers that are just automatically there because they're common questions that are asked, like vaccination, for example. Just saying.
Yeah. I mean, the point of these lives is to start a conversation around these topics, which are uniting all of us in this group. So we would really like it if people ask more questions that would make the lives more tailored towards those topics that are interesting for you guys. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Have a great day, everybody. We'll be back next week.
Thanks all.
Go Jays. Bye.